even experts need other experts from time to time. So I am proud to say that I know a Power Rangers expert. He is not only an author, but a voracious reader and a newly graduated creative writing expert from Weber State. Also
Weber
a
State.
family man.
Weber State.
Oh, Weber State. I'm sorry.
Fine.
I'm sorry.
It's a common
Let me.
exception.
I could.
Siri does the same thing.
Also, a family man, Mr. Tim Costello. How are you doing today, Tim?
Good. I'm fantastic.
Excellent. And like I said, you are the Power Rangers expert. So I said, I have to get Tim on to my show to talk all about Power Rangers because I am very curious what is going on in the Power Rangers universe. You, sir, will fill that need today. So let's start with your Power Rangers origin story. How did you get in indoctrinated into the Power Rangers universe?
Well, it had to have been when I was like 9 years old. Like this is '93
Oh,
when the show came on first, and I think it had a couple episodes because my first exposure is my parents got me these like set of videotapes. There were like five of them, and
oh,
each one had an episode that obviously the one that had Jason on the cover had is the first episode, but each one had an episode that focused on a certain ranger. Like Zach's was Happy Birthday Zach. I think Billy's was Food Fight. Trini's was No Clowning Around. I can't remember Kimberly's off the top of my head. But yeah, I watched those tapes and I was in. That was actually my first exposure to superheroes in general.
ooh, nice.
And so like because that show was on Fox Kids, and as I was watching the show live, we would have like Batman would be on, and Spider-Man and X-Men, and so that was my gateway into superhero stories. So I'll always be grateful to Power Rangers for that. So um saw the Power Rangers movie in the theater when I was a kid. All my friends, we watched that Green Ranger saga, Green with Evil, when it came out. It was just like that was appointment television for all the 10, 11-year
Yes.
olds in
Yes.
around the world. That's my main history, and like with Power Rangers comics, which we'll talk about. I've kind of gone back and forth on the show. Like season 6, Power Rangers in Space was supposed to be the series finale of Power
Ooh.
Rangers, and I remember staying up all night waiting for that last episode. And I was like, "All right, I watched it," and like 20 minutes later, I was asleep the rest of the day. And I would keep going back to it because I love these stories of these characters who are chosen to be superheroes, and they just keep doing the right thing no matter how hard it gets. Those stories have always stuck with me, and that translated into other superhero stories like Superman and Batman and the X-Men and Spider-Man. And so I just love these kind of stories, and I just couldn't get enough of them.
Nice. Man, that really hits home with me. I had some X-Men, the 92 X-Men cartoon. I had these tapes that came, I think they were like Pizza Hut tie-ins or something. Like you buy a pizza and you get an X-Men
Right.
VHS. And at the beginning they would have Stan Lee talking in a round table talking about creating the X-Men, and then they would have the episode. And I watched those VHS tapes religiously, like over and over and over again. And that was my kind of way into, they were airing at the time on Fox, but
Sure.
that was before streaming, before on demand. It was like if you missed it, you missed it. So
Exactly.
those VHS tapes,
Absolutely.
it
And I don't know
was,
if you remember
yeah.
this, but there was like with the season premieres of X-Men the animated series and with Power Rangers, they aired those premiere episodes at night, like those premiere
Oh,
episodes. That I remember there was like a
yeah.
prime time, like the season first episodes of season 2, when Lord Zed came in, like
Hmm.
they aired those, like they called it prime time Power Rangers, and they
Ah.
had the first episodes of Power Rangers of that season, but also the first episodes of X-Men, which was
Hmm.
you're pretty versed in X-Men the animated series, aren't you? You
Yes.
remember the episodes that Lady Deathstrike comes in? Yes,
Yes.
those are on TV at night, uh, over
Oh,
that like few days, and it was just it was a cool thing to be a part of
Mhm.
and to experience as a kid. Where you're like, I'm watching this show, my favorite show. It's not at 7:30 in the morning. It's at 7:30 at night. Like this is cool.
Yeah, this is like validation,
Yeah,
vindication, like, this
yeah,
is cool, this is what, this is not just for kids, little
right,
kids.
right.
So, yeah, I know exactly that feeling of watching animated shows, superhero animated shows in prime time. So that is amazing. I'm interested, I think as Power Rangers were airing, I remember, my dad was in the military, so we were moving every 2 years. I remember Power Rangers premiering, and I was like, "That's for babies, that's for little kids," and then sneaking home afterwards, "Oh, I'm gonna watch Power Rangers," like, I don't want anybody to know that I'm a fan of Power Rangers. So at the beginning, I don't know why I thought it was, like, younger, like, it was for a younger audience because I was, like, pretty much the prime audience at that time, like, I was the target audience.
Mhm.
So anyways, at the time, I don't remember those VHS tapes coming out, but if I had access to those, I probably would have watched them
Sure.
over and over and over again, so that's interesting that you said that, but, over the years, I'm like you, I'm attracted to that archetype that, these guys were chosen, they have this the hero's journey and the destiny of, "I'm a good person, and so I'm gonna use these powers to do good with them."
Yeah.
And they're also just cool. Just I love martial arts, I've always loved martial arts,
Sure.
and so the Power Rangers being, an old Japanese show, which also my grandmother was 100% Japanese, so I'm a quarter Japanese, so I have that tie. I've lived in Japan a couple times, like I said, my dad was in
Did
the
you
Air Force,
see
so
any of this
I've
Sentai
lived in
stuff?
Japan. I remember some stuff, but at the time, it was like, I don't speak Japanese, so I didn't know what was going on, but it was like, "Hey, those guys look cool,
Right,
and they're doing martial arts."
right.
But as far as the story goes, I had no idea, but when Power Rangers aired, I was like, "Hey, I remember seeing some of that." I had the same thing with Dragon Ball Z. When I was living in Japan, it hadn't yet hit the States, it hadn't been translated, so I remember just being enamored with that art style,
Mhm.
and I was like, "Man, this is so cool." I don't know what they're saying, but in my head, I'm creating my own storyline,
Right.
and once it got translated, I was in college when they finally translated it, and I was like, "This is nothing like what I made up in my head. These stories are completely different."
Yeah, and some of those
But
Japanese stories, like those Sentai stories, are really cool. I've watched some of them, and,
yeah,
like, they're really
yeah.
neat. I'm like, "Wow, this is like" I like Power Rangers, but man, this is so much cooler. There is that
Yeah,
there
I
is
need to.
there is
Are
that '90s cheesiness factor to it. So,
yes.
like
Yep.
going back, and I've gone back a couple times, and, like, man, this is so '90s. But,
Are those available on, do you know if those are available on YouTube?
they
I haven't even
all
looked.
the episodes are on, like, Sentai stuff, I think. Oh, what's the
Yes.
name of the app? I can't remember the name of the app that I watched them on. Shoot,
Okay.
I can't remember.
If you remember, we'll put it in the show notes later.
I think it's the
Um,
Shout Factory app. I think they're all there.
oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
And, so, yeah, that's where I watched a couple of them. Like, I watched
Okay. I should go back and watch those because 'cause I've never actually, like, sat down and watched it from start to finish, but, I'm curious to see what the actual storylines are.
some are interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so that was kinda like my Power Rangers origin story was like, I got into it through the show, through just, "Hey, it's on Fox Kids," I was already watching all the other Fox programming at the time, and then after I moved away from the States and I was overseas, I wasn't able to get it anymore. So and at the time, it felt like, "Oh, okay, that was a fad, Power Rangers is done now." Little did I know, 30 years later, I'm still interested and they're still putting out new content.
Well, not anymore.
So
Not so much anymore.
these
Not so much anymore as far as TV
right.
stuff. Cosmic Fury.
We got that reunion special that, you and I both we loved when it came out, we were both kinda texting each other like, "Yeah,
Yeah,
this is
it was
great."
great. It was
Um,
good. It was so good. It was better than I could have hoped it to be.
that was
That
cool,
was fun.
on Netflix.
Still there. Still there.
But you were the one who was like, "Hey, you should read the comics." And so that was why I said, "Hey, let's do a podcast and tell people about this and also tell me so I can get caught up on Power Rangers. So I wanted to ask your specific recommendations for comics to read, and like what would be the first one you would give to somebody who is new to Power Rangers?
Okay, so let me just give you my history of Power Rangers comics.
Yeah.
I was when Comixology was its own thing. I got a little Comixology Unlimited, and the movie was coming out, and you know
Ah,
I was
yes,
getting like
yes.
the live action movie, and I was getting excited about that.
Okay.
And I like, oh wow, Power a new Power Rangers movie. This is gonna be cool. Like this is great. I love how the suits look. I love how everything. It's just awesome. I'm excited. I went to that, and praise be to my wife who went with me to that movie. She we were newly married at the time. She's like, yeah, I'll go. I'm like, okay, and that's why I still keep her.
Ah.
So
You know, that was 2017. I still have not watched that movie yet. Would you at this point
hey,
in
it's
2024?
okay. I
Okay.
mean, if you have time, which I know you don't. So, so
Right.
I mean, it's it's an interesting thing. I mean, because obviously the Power Ranger suits look like Iron Man suits if you've seen any of the
Right.
posters,
Right.
and
Mhm.
so I mean, and the Rangers don't become Rangers until like 30 minutes till the movie's over. Uh,
Oh, wow.
yeah, so there's that. Yeah, so
I'm curious. I am curious.
yeah, it's check it out. I mean, it's an hour and a half.
Okay.
It's not awful. It's not Fan Forstig level stuff. So
Mm.
yeah, so
Okay.
it's not bad.
I'll check it out.
Yeah, check it out. So and
Yeah.
they had like the first several issues on there. Um, and so I'm reading these and I'm just like I'm loving them. Like this is so good. This is like what I wanted from a Power Ranger story. It's making use of the comic medium in a way that I would want to. Like just and there is nothing in comics for me than seeing a morphing sequence in a splash page. It's just every time it happens, and then it happens a lot in the comics. So every time it happens, I'm like, gotta screen cap that. It's awesome. It's so glorious.
Yes.
I love it. Just lights my geek fire up every time. Um, and so yeah, like I started there, and then I stopped after the first few issues because I just couldn't afford to get all. Because then, like like they had the Draken arc. That was part of it, and then I was like, I just can't afford this anymore because we were newly married, we were about to have a kid, um, and so I just couldn't afford to get into it. Go Go Power Rangers was starting to come out, and it's like I can't buy both of
Ah.
those, so I stopped for a while. And then, like during the pandemic, they came out with saying there's a new Green Ranger in comics. I'm like,
Ooh.
hmm, that's interesting. So I was like, what do I have to read to get caught up with this? And so I read all those, and I was just like, this is amazing. This is great. As far as first, I would just say start with issue 0, which is like, and get the first trade. Just start there because it's just all dovetailed off of that mainline story that
Okay.
has been continuing for since 2017, maybe 2016, late 2016, but it's been going since then. And they've had a really strong team of writers and artists on those books. It's been Dan Mora, who's doing great things in comics right now, started from there. That's how I found out about him.
Hmm.
And because he started on Go Go Power Rangers, and he's done a couple of other things in Power Rangers as well. And his art is just amazing, as you know. Um, but yeah, I would just recommend from that first trade. Also, uh, Soul of the Dragon, which
Ah,
is
yes.
really good. Like I liked it when it came out, like when I first read it, not when it came out because it had been out for a while at the time, that point. Um, and but after the sad, unfortunate passing of Jason David Frank, I read it again, and
Hmm.
it hit differently. It was just way more powerful. It was a great tribute to that character, and it was just awesome. It's great. But yeah,
And that's the one that's kinda like Old Man Logan,
yeah,
but
yeah,
Tommy. It's like Old Man Tommy.
yeah. that's what I would describe it to people. That's how I described it to you. Is it's Old Man Logan with Tommy. That's basically what it
Yes.
is. Um,
Yes.
and so, and it's a really good book. It's a really good book. Of but coming out here next month, we have a thing coming out
Ooh.
that's really exciting. Is Amy Jo Johnson, who played the original Pink Power Ranger Kimberly in the
Mhm.
show, is co-writing with her. It's her boyfriend or her husband, or it's her partner. Um, she's co-writing a a short miniseries called Mighty Morphin Power Rangers: The Return. And
Ooh.
it's like takes place in an alternate reality where where because in the show there was cast changes due to SAG stuff. We won't get into that. Something really cool they did in the comic. They actually explained where those actors went, like where those characters went
Mm.
at that time, which was like, you didn't need to do that, but I salute you, sir. These comics have been slowly bubbling in popularity that that the Draken character, Jason David Frank, would see people cosplaying as Draken, and then he himself would cosplay as Draken. Um, and in fact, because it was all part of this big crossover event that was commemorating the 25th anniversary of Power Rangers at the time. It's called Shattered Grid, and
Ah,
to promote it, the writer who's writing it at the time, Kyle Higgins, awesome. He's great. He's wonderful. And he directed a little short trailer thing, like basically this is what's coming in the book. And he wrote and directed a short that features Tommy as Draken. It's just lovely. It's so cool to watch. Like if you haven't watched it, you just watch that. You're just like, okay, that sounds cool. So
I may have seen that, like, it sounds familiar, but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it's
I
really
need to
cool. It's
watch it
really
for
cool.
sure.
Production value is great. Like it feels like a
Nice.
mini movie. But yeah, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers: The Return is coming. It's co-written by Amy Jo Johnson. That's coming out middle or beginning of next month, I think. I'm
Okay.
really excited about it. They had a teaser for it in the 30th anniversary issue special.
Ooh, yes.
There's like a small little teaser thing for it, and I've reread that part like a bunch of times because it's just so cool. Yeah,
Yes.
it's really cool. So yeah, that's what I recommend. Starting with issue 0, Soul of the Dragon, and if they want to wait, then they can get a nice little jumping on point with this miniseries that's coming out.
Perfect. Man, I can't wait. I did read the Soul of the Dragon that you recommended to me, and I started, I think was it the main series that you recommended to me?
Yeah.
It was the one,
Well, I get
man, now I'm
Go Power
blanking.
Rangers.
Yeah, that's what it was, yes. So I've started down the path, and I'm thankful that I have a Power Rangers expert to guide me, and, I'm having a great time so far. Like you said, the standouts to me are having Dan Mora on the art and getting new stories with these characters
Yeah,
and kind of a new perspective on them from for me, my only perspective on them has been that '90s show,
sure.
and over the years, like, hearing about it in the background, but I haven't been keeping up with it, and this is a new, format for me, so I'm loving, like you said, having the grids of the morphing sequences, and I could hear the theme song in my head,
Yeah,
I can hear them saying all the actors saying their each, mechs and their Zords, and it's just a great experience for me. So I'm very happy that you reached out to me and said, "Hey, you should be reading the Power Rangers," because like I said, it's been something that I've wanted to get caught up on. Same thing with TMNT, the Turtles comics. They're so daunting because there's like
they're just
so many issues. That's the same thing with the Power Rangers.
yeah, because
It's
they're
like
coming up on they just released issue 116.
I have a lot of work to do, but
I'm
I'm also starting
MNT, so I'm
I'm starting to, change my reading habits because back in the day, I wanna say, like, if you approached me 5 years ago, I would have said, "Oh, I have to start at issue number 1. I can't jump ahead, I can't do anything." Now, in 2024, I'm starting to say, "You know what? If I keep having that approach, I'm never gonna get caught up because there's just too much content. So, let me just jump in wherever the current storyline is, whatever the current jumping on point is, let me jump in." And I've done that recently with Spawn. I've done it with kind of a little bit with Ninja Turtles. Like I've dipped in and out, but I haven't stayed consistent. Some of the Star Wars books, like I've been behind on them, so I'm like, man, it's going to take me so long to get caught up. I might as well just jump in, and I think I'm going
And
to
you're doing
do
that
that with Power
now
Rangers.
too.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
There's a ton of jumping in points that I'm doing, so I'm I think I'm gonna get more accomplished that way rather than waiting on the sidelines and saying, "Well, I still gotta read those 500 issues, those back issues." I'm now gonna say, "No, let me just jump right in."
You could
So
jump into 101 and just go forward from there. I think you could.
Wee
I recently because issue 100 is obviously like the culmination of like so many different stories, that have been told because that was Ryan Parrott's last regular issue on the book. And
ah, dang, yeah.
yeah,
You know, it's crazy how many, parallels there are to Ninja Turtles because they just had an arc where it was like the same creator was on 100 issues and he left, and then a new creator came on, like, a lot of similarities between these 2 properties.
yeah, it's funny because Kyle Higgins, who starts the book, like leaves. I can't remember what issue, but it's after Shattered Grid. Shattered Grid's when he stepped away, and then they were like trying to figure out like what they wanted to do with the rest of the title, and so they had like a mini arc called Beyond the Grid that involves like a bunch of different Rangers becoming a team, and then and then Ryan Parrott picks up with the Necessary Evil arc, and then going forward to unlimited power, and then this is another arc that he did, and then he's like, oh, you know what, I'm going to split the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers into 2 books with Mighty Morphin and Power Rangers, and then he realized, no, I can't do that, so I'm going to focus on this one and give it to another writer. And so, but the
Yeah.
writing on the books have been great, and now Melissa Flores is
Nice.
writing it, and it's funny because all these different Power Ranger writers that have written on the comic are now writing together in Image Comics with the Massiveverse,
Mm.
Radiant Black, Dead
Yes.
Luck,
Yes.
Sun,
Yes.
like Ryan Parrott's writing Rogue Sun, uh, Kyle Higgins is writing Radiant Black, Melissa Flores is writing Dead Lucky. Matt Groom, who is actually a Power Rangers podcaster, who knew Kyle Higgins through through his podcast that he would do, and then when Ryan Parrott's like, okay, I need to step back, Matt, will you take this for me? Because Matt Groom actually co-wrote the Ultraman comics, which are great,
Ooh.
with Kyle Higgins, and so now they're all together working in the Massive.
Nice.
So
Nice.
that's really cool. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Man, there's just so much, great stuff that's coming out these days, but
it's
like I said, I'm glad Tim is here to guide me and you, in our journeys through the world of the Power Rangers. I think we're gonna continue as the new story arc comes out and as the new stuff comes out. I'm gonna continue to have Tim come back in the future here in the Vectorverse. But thank you for joining me today, my friend. This has been an excellent Power Rangers talk so far.